So let's talk about synthetics. Now, the benefits of the synthetics are that you can go and leverage your purchasing way more than you could if you just bought the stock. So, for example, if Tesla's at $1,100, which is roughly where it is today, for 1,000 shares, you're going to need over $1 million to buy Tesla. And so, who's got $1 million just sitting around for one stock? Now, maybe you do, and that's great. Do you have $1 million worth of Tesla? And if you do, great. So I can tell you that I'd rather control $1 million worth of Tesla stock by owning 4,000 shares of it rather than just owning the stock itself. To me, the holy grail of what the cash flow machine is all about gets to the point where you're investing in synthetics. That's what I believe is the real strength of what we do. Now, there's nothing wrong with the fast launch portion of the program, which is basically buy the stock, sell the call, use the 1% method, to get your 1% a week. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's great. And that is a phenomenal way to trade. And if you do nothing else, it's still better than most of the systems out there on Wall Street. But when you add the synthetics in, like we've been talking about, like we're going to continue to talk about, you gain a lot of benefits. So I usually say it's about a 3 to 4 to 1 ratio of how much more stock you control with synthetics than you can with the stock itself. Now, as we know, and as we're figuring out, you don't get something for nothing, right? There's no free lunch on Wall Street, certainly. And so when you get more shares, you're going to give something up. So what is the control of more shares mean in what you give up? Well, you're going to have more slippage, right? You're usually going to have a deeper in the money call, and there's usually going to be a bigger spread. It's going to cost you more to get in and out. So you don't want to be trading it in and out, right? You want to kind of hold it to its expiration or just get out of the position altogether if you need to. Number one. Number two, it's going to have a delta slippage. So, I like to buy things with about a 90% delta or 20% of the money, depending on how you look at it. I usually try to shoot for about a 90% delta. Well, that means that if the stock is going up, you are only getting 90% of the gain. Right? A 90 delta means it moves 90% of the move. So for every dollar, you get 0.9. Well, that's fine as long as the stock is moving up. And when it moves down, it moves against you. And so there's a little extra wonkiness when it comes to synthetics. You really can't rely on your accounting because you have that huge spread. You've got the delta move. You've got all kinds of other variables that are going in on it, unrealized versus realized. So it's very, very difficult to track your account on a daily basis with any real accuracy. Now, of course, if you want to, close your account out and head to the hills, then there is some validity in that accounting. But we're not in this for a week or a month. We're in this for the long term. And so that long term has that play between stored value, defending your position, the 75% rule, all the things that we talk about. There's a back and forth, a flow in all those things. So I want to now focus some time on which synthetic do you buy? Now, I'm going to use Tesla. It's a live market. Right now, Tesla's at $1,093. And let's just kind of assume it's 1,100 just to round the number off a bit easier. So when I'm looking at getting into a synthetic position, I want to get into a synthetic position that is leveraged enough that gives me some advantage of having a synthetic, but it also is got some validity when it comes to the stock move. So what I normally do, and I try to strive for, is I try to find about a 90% delta. You can also use the 20% in the money method. That works really well too, especially when your stock is trending up because you can buy more. But let's take a look at both of those scenarios. So here in front of you, you have Tesla at $1,093.57, roughly $1,100. Now, if you want to go 20% in the money, it's $1,100. That's going to be, $220 off of $1,100, right? So it's going to be roughly, $900 or maybe $880, something like that. If you go to the 880s, you could certainly trade the 880s, and you're going to spend for the 880s, you're going to spend $283 if you go out 106 days. So that's 90 days. Now, you have to decide, is that a good one for you? Well, it's got a 77 delta. I like a 90 delta if I could do it. So how do I get that 90 delta so that it moves in conjunction with the stock? Pretty much, right? That's the question. The other thing is if you haven't put a time value or an extrinsic value column in your trading system, now's the time to do it. I've kind of wanted you to not do it because I want you to calculate the juice without having to look at something that's already calculated. I want you to build the muscle of calculating the juice. But hopefully now you've been able to do that, and now you understand what the juice is. And so now let's put that extrinsic value or that time value column like I have here. So when I look at my time value on those 880s, and I go out to them, the time value is $68. That's the juice. So you're going to have to pay juice, not getting juice this time. You're going to have to pay $68 worth of juice for roughly 106 days. And so you divide that by, how many weeks 106 days is, and, it looks like about, 13 weeks. My math is slow today, so what I'm going to do is pull up a calculator. 106 days divided by 7. And that's 15 weeks, okay? So we got 15 weeks. Now, we take $68 and whatever that is divided by 15 weeks, and that's about $4.53 a week. Okay, remember that number. It's about $4.63 a week. All right, so now let's go back out to the more recent ones, the ones we would sell. Let's say we'd sell next week's call. Next week's call is 8 days out. We would go, let's just say we're going to go at the money, and that would be $47. That's how much juice we would get for 8 days of holding this position short. So we would buy that 880, and then we would get $47.45 back. Now, is that worth it to us? It's costing us $4.53 worth of juice every week, but we get back $48 or $47.70 right now, right? And that's pretty good. Now that's in the money. Let's go out of the money, and it's $48.75 or something like that. So it costs us, roughly $4.53 worth of juice, but we get back $48.70. Sounds like a pretty good trade-off. Now, you've got to remember, it's a 77 delta on that base. So if the stock moves up $10, you're only going to get $7.70 of a move. Wow. Okay. But you're going to get 100% of that move if it goes over the money on the short. That's short term. Long term, we don't know whether it's going to go up. We don't know whether it's going to go down. We can't think of it like that. Yes, you're going to get 100% of the delta because it's in the money by the time it expires. But also if it's out of the money, by the time it expires, you get 100% of the juice that you collected, right? So we don't know. We just have to say we want to collect our juice every week. Okay. The only problem is if it goes up and we have to do 100% every single week, it's going to take us a few weeks for it to go up and kind of consolidate. Because if we're on a runner, right, like if there's a stock that's running, then it's running up and we're losing basically 13%. What is it, 13? It's actually 23% every week on that base. Now, the delta is going to increase as the stock goes in the money, as the stock goes up, right? It's going to increase on the base. But we're going to be locking in 100% loss every time. I don't care usually, but I like to have a 90 delta. So instead of doing those 880s, I'd rather have a 90 delta. And that way I'm not getting hammered for 23% juice. Maybe I'm only losing 13% juice. And after a few weeks, it's going to make up for it, right? Because I'm getting $48 worth of at the money juice every single week. And at some point, it's going to make up for it. The stock's not going to go to the sky. Trees don't grow to the sky. So let's take a look now. By the way, I was out in the, out in the Marches. The Marches were 106 days. If I go back to the Februaries, let's take a look at those. Go to the Februaries, go to the 880s. Well, there aren't any. So let's look at the 700s. And you can see that now in February, sorry, not 700s, 800s, or 900s, actually a little bit closer. So we've got a 76 delta, pretty much the same, and we get a 1 month less. I don't know. I don't like that deal. And it's $61.40 juice. I don't like those odds compared to the other ones. So for me, I'd rather go farther out to the Marches. Well, what happens if we go even farther out than that? Let's go to the Aprils. Now, the Aprils for the 800s, the 900s, is going to be a 75 delta. Interesting. The delta went down, and it's $87 of juice. So, roughly the same, per week juice, but, we get an extra month. So if the stock goes down and we don't have a chance to recover our 77 delta because it's gone down and we haven't had it go back up, well, then we're going to want a longer expiration. So this is part of the dance. Is you kind of have to go out there and look. Maybe let's look at May. All right. So May, looking at the 900s, it's $104 worth of juice it's going to cost us. That's pretty expensive. And you're still only getting a 74 delta, right? But you get 169 days on this thing. You get about 6 months from now, almost, right? So what's the trade-off there? Well, 147. Let's figure out how many weeks. 169 divided by 7 is 24 weeks. 104.95, and this is the only thing that you do. But divided by 24 is 4.37 worth of juice per week. Now remember, we were at 453. You got it all figured out on Wall Street, right? We're at 437 worth of juice. So you get to decide. Do you want to spend more money and go out? Or do you want to spend less money and go in, but then you don't have that latitude of if the stock moves up and down? It's really your call. Now, what I'd rather do is I'd rather look out. I like at least 3 months out, maybe 4 months out, because I get that whole quarterly thing in there, and then I get some leeway out of that if the numbers that they report on a quarterly basis are bad. I'd rather go out 3 or 4 months. I don't want just a basic spread that goes out just a few weeks, because the chances of you making money on that if the stock goes down are pretty slim. We want that stock to keep going up or stay the same, or even if it goes down and we make that kind of juice every week, it's fine. It's just we can't manage our risk if we have a short-term synthetic. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's go back to the Aprils. Okay, Aprils will give us, roughly 4 months, right? Maybe a little more than 4 months. And we go out there, we say the Aprils. Now, how far do we have to go down to get a 90 delta? Well, we have to go all the way down to the 675s. But look at the juice on the 675s. It's $27. Okay, it's 133 days divided by 7. That's 19 weeks. Okay, and we're talking about $27, 27.20 divided by 19. So that's $1.43 a week in juice, right? Now, to me, to pay $1.43 a week in juice and get a 90 delta, those are two really good things compared to the other one where we're at 880. Now, at the 880s or the 900s, let's just go back to the 900s, we're talking about spending $280 to buy those. But when we go down to the 90s, these 675s, we're talking about spending $400. So we can only buy half as many by getting this gain, right? Getting this cheaper weekly juice and 90 delta. So you got to give up something. So what do you like? Do you like the safety of the 90 delta? Do you like the cheapness of the smaller juice per week? Or do you want to buy more contracts? Now, if you buy more contracts, there's nothing wrong with that call, right? Let's say you get twice as many contracts if you go to the 900s versus the 675s. That's cool. You just have to know that you gave up an extra 13% of a move in delta if that happens. So if the stock stays the same, you don't really care. If the stock goes down, you kind of don't care that much if it goes down a little bit. You really care if the stock just goes up, it goes up, it goes up, and you constantly have to roll up, right? And you care if it really goes down because your delta is going to slip even more than 75. It's going to go down even more. So I like a 90 delta. And not saying that's the right thing, but if you have a 90 delta, you just can predict things a little bit more. It's a little bit more smooth. It's a little less volatile. So let's take a look at another stock. Okay, so we are looking at Tesla there. Let's look at NVIDIA. Okay, so let's compare NVIDIA. Now, NVIDIA is trading at 321. So first of all, let's start at next week's juice. So here's what we get next week, just to kind of know. At 320s, we're getting $9.64 worth of juice. Okay, roughly 10 bucks a juice. Not bad. Now, what do we have to do to get into this position? Well, I like to go out 3 or 4 months. So let's start by looking at the Aprils. Okay. Now let's compare. And every stock is different, by the way, right? So we're going to compare this 320, that would be $64 down off of 320. So 320 minus 64 puts us roughly around 256. So if you use the 20% deep method, you go to the 250s. And the 250s have an 83 delta, 82.9, right? And they're going to cost you $10.71 for 4 months, right? That's how much the juice is going to cost you for 4 months. Not too bad. Remember how much juice we're getting this week. So it's going to take the first week of juice to make up for all the juice you're going to get, and then you're going to have that position for the next 4 months. We have to kind of assume that it stays the same. So what happens if it stays the same? Well, you know that the answer is its stock is going to move at 83% of the move, and you're not going to get the full gain. So if this thing takes off and it goes to 400, that's awesome. You're going to be making money, but you're just not going to make as much because you're going to have to buy back, but you're going to be getting the juice every week. At some point, it's going to plateau, and then you're going to be able to collect the juice without having to buy back or having to buy back a little bit. But by that time, your juice is gone. Your delta has gone up on your base. Kind of get the idea, I hope. All right. So then what would I do? I don't think I would do this 82.9, although it is a little bit tempting. Now, that's an $84.60 buy, right, to go for these 250s. But what if I went down to my 90? Well, instead of spending $84, I'd spend $109, right? And I'd only pay $5.33. That's a no-brainer to me. To go from this 83 juice to a 90 juice, it only cost me an extra 20 bucks. And the juice is less per week. So I think, again, I would probably default to spending $109. It's not double like it was on Tesla. Now, we got $109 on these 220s. Let's take a look at the 220s going out to June. This might be interesting. 220s going out to June is about $9.50 of juice. Still kind of the same, maybe even better, right? But the 220s are at an 88 delta, 87.8, okay? And they're going to cost you $113. That's not bad. You went out another couple of months, April, May, and June. You went out 2 months, and it only cost you another $4. Remember, the other ones were at 109. That's not bad. That's interesting, actually. But let's see if we can crank this down to a 90 delta, somewhere around the 200s or the 205s. The 200s or the 205s are going to cost, 200s are going to cost you 130, $5.94 of juice. So half the juice of the ones that are 225, right? So you can look at this one and say, wow, for 130 bucks, I get a 91.6 delta, and it cost me 5.92, but I'm going out more than a half a year. So I'm going to have this position for more than a half a year. Interesting. I like that even better, actually. Well, let's take a look, because there's no right answer here. It's really up to you. How much money do you want to put in versus how safe do you want to be, and how much juice is it going to cost you every week, that kind of stuff. Let's say we go way out. Let's go out. They have the 24s out now, right? Here we are at the end of 2021. This one goes out, it's just a little over 2 years. It expires in January of 24, and here we are in December of 21. Just a little bit over 2 years. How much, let's say we wanted to be in this position for a long time, buying this leap that goes out 778 days. If we wanted to get a 90 delta, we'd go down to the 165s, okay? That would cost us $16 worth of juice, but remember, it's for 2 years now. 2 years, and it costs you $16.22. Well, let's take a look at that. 778 divided by 7 is 111 weeks. $16.30 divided by 111, I think is how many weeks, right? It's 14.5 cents juice. Now, you got to spend $183 to control that, right? To control that share, right? Or $18,300 to control 100 shares. But it's a 90 delta. So the farther you go out, the less you're paying in juice per week. Interesting. The more you're paying for your base position. Remember, we started at something a lot cheaper than 183. It was like half of that. But you might have to do this 3 or 4 times, which means you have to spend more money in juice. Are you kind of getting it? Now, this is what I want you to do, right? This is what I do when I'm getting ready to get into a position. I compare months versus years and see how much juice per week it is. That's the way I can get everything to compare apples and apples rather than apples and oranges, right? Because the juice always looks different. And then I just have to use the smell test. This is smell right to me, all right? Instead of owning this at $3.21, do I want to spend $183 to own it? $182.50 now. Well, I mean, that's saving some, but you're only basically able to get twice as many contracts or shares controlled as you would if you bought the stock. It's a little bit of a benefit. It's not a huge benefit. So therefore, I mean, even though it's cheaper per week in juice, I'd probably dial it back to the Aprils or the Junes of next year. because I'm gonna spend a little bit more money in juice. I'm gonna still get some, but then I won't be locked into mentally locked in because you can always sell it, but I won't be locked in for 2 years, right? 778 days. So there's kind of a balance. Here's what I've found. In the beginning, I went out 3 or 4 months. It worked incredibly well, and I had a great market to help me, so I felt really good about it. And then I started to do some of these really long ones, these 2-year ones, right? And they work really well too if the stock kind of stays the same, kind of trends up, and we don't know if it will or not. We have to assume it will. They work really well too, but you're kind of mentally locked into that. And if the stock goes down after you buy it, you kind of got to hang in there for a long time. I don't know. I like the ones that go out 4 to 6 months. That seems to be the sweet spot for me. That's where I've had a lot of luck. It's a little bit more juice cost per week usually, but at the end of the period of time, it mentally allows me to exit the position or to roll forward or to do a couple other things rather than feeling like I'm locked in for 778 days. This is an art, not a science. But I want you to understand, you can use the 20% deep method. You can use the 90 delta method. If you feel more comfortable with a 95 delta, you could do that. If you feel more comfortable with the stock, that's also great because that's got 100 delta, right? You never lose anything. The stock goes up and down. But you want to be able to, I always like to try to get 3 to 4 times as many shares with the same amount of money as I would if I bought the stock. So I'm always kind of striving for that. Now, I don't believe that you take much more risk. In fact, my studies and back tests have shown that your risk is improved or increased a little bit, like 1x, just a little over 1x. But if you get 3 to 4 times x, right, that's the reward you can get. Give up the delta, you don't get all the reward, but because you have so many more shares that you're controlling, you get a lot of reward. I've been able to make a ton of money on that Tesla that I showed you because it pays so much money in juice every week. Yes, it costs money to be deep in the money for sure. But since we've had that stock for more than a year and a half, it just sits there and collects juice every week. It's the beauty of the cash flow machine. I hope you're understanding that. So I wanted to kind of just give you that idea of how I scan things, how I think about things. And you may want to watch this again. Maybe I confused you, but I highly recommend that your homework on this is to pick a stock that you like. Remember, solid and exciting stock that you like, that's in an uptrend, hopefully. And now really go analyze. If you were to do synthetics, how deep should you go? Should you go 20% deep? Should you do the 90 delta method? Compare all that and then break it down by how much it's going to cost you a week in juice. And that might help you make that decision. Okay, so I hope I was able to shed some things. The idea is to expand your brain, but you're going to have to do your own homework to really get this locked in and understanding how synthetics work. Mark Yagi here, wealth architect and author of this book on my covered call investing system called the Cash Flow Machine. Listen, what you just saw is just one part of creating reliable income of 2 to 4% a month from the stock market. But if it were that easy, then everyone would do it, right? If you want to learn how I create investment income the right way, then you need to learn and have a system with rules and what-if strategies so that you can learn what I do when the market goes against me, what I do when the stock goes against me, how to adjust my trade so that it's always in a winning position, how much to risk, how to build a multi-million-dollar portfolio that creates income of $10,000, $20,000, or $30,000 a month in semi-passive income. Now, best of all, the whole cash flow machine system takes less than an hour a week to implement. Just go to cashflowmachine.io to learn more or click this link for more videos, masterclasses, and free resources. See you there.